You know that awful feeling you get after finishing a piece of media that you absolutely loved? That feeling where you just lie down and stare at the ceiling for an hour wondering what you do with your life now that it's over? Well, I hate that feeling, and if you're anything like me, you're probably not the biggest fan of it either. So for the sake of both of us, I'm gonna figure out how to fix it. Now, as stated in The Art of War by Sun Tzu, we have to know our enemy here. So why exactly does this feeling even happen in the first place? Well, to understand that, we need to understand the goal of nearly any piece of fictional media, to transport you to another world. Immersion is defined as being deeply involved in a particular activity. In the case of games, this is something you've surely felt before, that feeling when the world around you seems to disappear as your focus becomes dedicated entirely to the game you're playing. You know you're truly immersed not when you think to yourself, wow, this is immersive, I'm immersed, but instead when you don't think anything at all. When you're truly immersed in a game, you don't actually know you're immersed, you just are. There are dozens of ways a game can do this. Maybe it's a boss fight that requires your full attention. Challenging games like Celeste are great at this. You'll go through these gauntlets where one minor mistake will result in failure, and because one single hit sends you back to the start of the screen in this game, you absolutely must not make a mistake. This creates a tense situation where, because the game is so punishing and because it requires your full attention to succeed, you become immersed. But that's just one of the paths to immersion. A game doesn't have to be hard to be immersive. Some of the best story games can have scenes where you're impossibly glued to the screen for minutes at a time, as if you're in a room with these characters, just as shocked, sad, or awestruck as they are. And all of this immersion is accomplished without a single button press. Immersion in games and media as a whole is so important because it's the whole point of some parts of media. I mean, sure, there are documentaries that aim to teach you more about the world, but when it comes to these fictional settings, the goal is to allow you to escape your everyday life. For a moment, you're not an underpaid customer service rep for a multi-billion-dollar company living in a studio apartment. You're a hero who soars through the skies, a shinobi who battles supernatural beasts, or even a goat? You get the point. Games allow us to escape the repetitive monotony that life can sometimes devolve into and temporarily take us on one-of-a-kind journeys through vibrant worlds and inspiring stories. That's why immersion is so special, and it's why the most memorable games are always the ones that are able to immerse us into their worlds. However, this comes with a pretty obvious problem. What happens when you face the final enemy? The story reaches its climax, your favorite characters are able to conquer their demons both inside and out and live happily ever after. And then the screen goes black, and it's just you back in that 500 square foot studio, back to work, back to your real life. And two words echo through your head as you sit there. What now? The catch-22 here is that the better the game was, the more successful it was at immersing you in its world, the worse this feeling is going to be. And when you think about it, that kinda makes sense, right? I mean, sure, there's always the argument of it was just a video game, just move on, but it's not really that simple. You can think of it like this. Imagine you go on a vacation with 5 people you've never met before. After spending a couple weeks with these people, learning about them, running into problems, and working together to find solutions, you become close with them. Maybe you'll even consider them friends. Now, just imagine what that flight home would be like if at the end of the trip you were told you could never see these people again. You could never travel back to that place you were. Of course, these are real humans in real places, so it's certainly not one-to-one, but it's the same root feeling, the same idea, just to a different degree. However, a more tangible reason for this feeling is a bit more practical, and it actually has very little to do with immersion. You see, depending on the game, finishing it can even disrupt your schedule. When I played the newest Xenoblade game, I spent hours a day nearly every single day playing that game. It became a part of my daily routine. I'd get home from work, edit or write for a video, eat dinner, and spend the rest of the night playing Xenoblade. I did this for months, so when it was gone, there was suddenly this hole. Something just felt wrong in my daily life because of it. If you've ever picked up a hobby and gotten really into it only to suddenly lose access to it, you understand this feeling. It might seem like I'm being a bit pedantic about this point, but it can be really hard to understand why just finishing a video game can create such a melancholy feeling. However, menacing though it may be, this feeling is not insurmountable. So here are the solutions I've come up with. They've all got their positives and negatives, and while I think the final one is the most important, it's also the least practical, so we'll cover it last. The first preventative alternative method I've come up with is a little bleak, but it's surprisingly effective. It's not my favorite solution, but it might be the one that works the most consistently. Simply gaslight yourself into believing that you don't care. This sounds like a joke, but it really does work. If you go out of your way to remind yourself that it's just a game and constantly break the immersion along with telling yourself that it doesn't matter that this world is going to end, then eventually you'll actually believe it. The reason I don't love this solution should be pretty obvious. It ruins the immersion. Sure, it's effective in that the ending won't hurt anymore, but it's kinda like burning your house down to kill a spider. It works, but think about what we lose in the process. So option 2 aims to prevent such drastic consequences. I employed this solution with Tears of the Kingdom, my most anticipated game of the year, and maybe even the past 6 years as well. About halfway through Tears of the Kingdom, I downloaded Final Fantasy V onto my Switch and started planning to play it. Crucially, I didn't actually start the game until I finished Tears. But as I neared the end of Zelda, with each area explored, temple cleared, and village saved, my anticipation for Final Fantasy V grew. It was in this way that by the end of the game, I was able to skip over that period of post-game depression and jump straight into a new adventure that I was seriously looking forward to. Now that scheduling problem from earlier disappears as well because I can just fill Zelda's time slot with Final Fantasy. This solution worked brilliantly, but you do have to plan for it in advance. Now the final solution is the one that I consider the most important because it applies not just to games, but to all kinds of media as well. And it's something that a game I played last year taught me. Outer Wilds changed how I viewed the end. I won't say too much about this game so as to avoid spoilers, seriously go play it, it's fantastic, but it does raise an interesting point. There have been entire games that I never finished because I was afraid of feeling that post-game depression, so instead of suffering that loss, I just dropped them before I reached the end. But maybe we shouldn't even be trying to avoid post-game depression at all. I recently had to end something that was really special to me, something that meant a lot for a few years, and something that I'll never forget, and obviously, it hurt. But when talking to my friend about it, he told me this. You know, the fact that it hurt so much just means that the time you spent there mattered. It means that it was meaningful, that it was worth it. And I think he's right. There's a price we pay when we embark on these incredible journeys, and it's not just that $70 entrance fee. We go on these adventures with the knowledge that they may make us laugh or cry, that they'll show us something we've never seen before, that we'll get to escape to another world for just a few dozen hours. However, we also go in with the knowledge that they are going to end, and I don't think that's something to fear anymore, because if these adventures are going to be as extraordinary as they are, that's a price I'm willing to pay.